Hello and welcome to Planet Pulse on Firstpost. The Earth is constantly changing, and in recent years, for the worse. Summers are getting hotter and winters harsher. Rising sea levels, floods, droughts, wildfires, and torrential rain have been disrupting lives across continents. The fight against climate change is needed now more than ever. On this show, we bring you all the top stories on the climate crisis, its causes, its brutal effects, and the warriors helping to fight the menace. Super Typhoon Ragasa tore across Asia with unrelenting force, leaving shattered glass, sunken streets, and broken lives in its wake. In Hong Kong, waves burst through hotel doors and sent furniture afloat. In Taiwan, a mountain lake collapsed, releasing torrents like a tsunami from the hills. In the Philippines, fishermen vanished in raging seas. And in China, more than 2 million people fled as winds roared at 241 kilometres per hour. Typhoon Ragasa was no ordinary storm. It was nature testing its limits, fueled by warming seas. The scars remain, and the questions grow louder. Our next report brings you more.
The storm has passed, but the scars remain. In China's Guangdong, streets are buried under broken trees. Excavators claw at the wreckage. Power lines droop, and rescuers are racing against time to save the locals.
Yes, it was a major typhoon, especially when the rainfall intensified after it passed near Shenzhen. Now the rain is easing up.
In Hong Kong, furniture was scattered chaotically. A hotel lobby lies drowned. Playgrounds have become rivers. At least 90 people are injured. Hundreds of trees are gone. And yet the city breathes a sigh. It was spared the direct hit.
What I heard was the piercing sound of the wind in the early morning, a mix of wind and rain. I usually sleep deeply, but it woke me up many times throughout the night. These trees were also uprooted. The power of nature is indeed very huge.
Macau looks surreal. The tourist hotspot of Senado Square was largely devoid of people. Rescue crews drifted on inflatable boats, while the residents, half submerged, patiently waited for help to arrive. Ragasa struck southern China on Wednesday evening. It had weakened, but only slightly. Winds still screamed at 144 kilometers per hour. Gusts topped 241. 2 million people were moved to safety. Flights cancelled, cities silent, an entire province holding its breath. But the storm's rage had already carved a deadly path. In Taiwan, rain tore open the mountains. A barrier lake collapsed in Hualien. 15 million tons of water crashed down. Bridges vanished. Roads dissolved. Homes drowned. And 17 people died.
My friends are buried inside over there. So who am I supposed to speak to? How can we find them? Their bodies have been washed over in the floods.
In the Philippines, fishermen never made it home. Their boats flipped in the furious surf of Cagayan. Seven drowned. Others remain missing. Nearly 700,000 people felt the storm's hand. Towns flooded, thousands fled. At its height, Ragasa was a beast of the sea. Winds spun at 280 kilometers per hour. It was called a super typhoon, a Category 5 giant, the strongest storm of 2025. But why so strong? Scientists point to the ocean, warmer by 1.5 degrees Celsius in a century. Every degree is fuel, and Ragasa fed on it endlessly.
Because of global warming, you will have more moisture in the atmosphere, and water temperature is also high, and therefore you would expect to have once the storm develops, it has more energy, and so you can expect the storm to become even more intense in the future.
Ragasa's path was perfect for havoc. Long stretches over warm seas, no land to break its stride. And by the time it neared China, it had become the very definition of destruction. Now it moves west. Vietnam braces. Officials secure dams, fishing boats, hospitals, and people wait, watching the sky. Even though the storm has weakened, the memory is raw. Debris clogs houses in Taiwan. Families in the Philippines count the missing. In Hong Kong, residents return to streets scarred with destruction. And in other parts of China, millions step outside shelters to see what remains. Ragasa will be remembered as the storm of the year. Perhaps even the storm of the decade. But here's the question that lingers, louder than the wind it left behind. If this is today's storm, what storms await tomorrow?
China just did what it's never done before. The world's top polluter has now set absolute numeric targets to cut emissions. And the timing is no coincidence. Just as the United States doubles down on use of fossil fuels and Europe falls behind on its emission cut targets, Beijing has signaled a different course. Our report looks at what this means for the climate crisis and how hope and hard reality continue to collide on the world stage.
At a high-stakes climate summit in New York, where leaders from 120 nations gathered to map out a path for humanity's future, a message flashed across screens. It came not from Washington or Brussels, but from Beijing. Chinese President Xi Jinping announced the country's first ever absolute emission targets. A pledge to reduce carbon output by 7 to 10% by 2035. President Xi said his country would increase the share of non-fossil fuels in total energy consumption to over 30% in next 10 years. For the first time, the world's biggest emitter has put a number on the table. Observers admit the target may sound modest because China has a history of under-promising and over-delivering, powered by its booming solar and wind sectors, electric cars, and vast reforestation programs. Chinese President Xi put it rather simply. Climate response is an urgent task, and the world must step up before it's too late.
China will, by 2035, reduce economy-wide net greenhouse gas emissions by 7% to 10% from peak levels, striving to do better, increase the share of non-fossil fuels in total energy consumption to over 30%. These targets represent China's best efforts based on the requirements of the Paris Agreement. Meeting these targets requires both painstaking efforts by China itself and a supportive and open international environment. We have the resolve and confidence to deliver on our commitments. Colleagues, great visions require concrete actions. Climate response is an urgent, yet long-term task. Let's all step up our actions to realize the beautiful vision of harmony between man and nature and preserve planet Earth, the place we call home.
The Chinese statement carried added significance because just a day earlier, the US President Donald Trump dismissed climate change as a con job while pledging to boost fossil fuels at home and abroad. The contrast could not have been sharper.
What we did was climate change. Because if it goes higher or lower, whatever the hell happens, there's climate change. It's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion.
China contributes nearly 30% of global emissions. Its emissions are projected to peak by the end of this year. Until now, its climate pledges stopped at going net zero by 2060. This new cut to specify the quantity of carbon cuts was missing, and now it's here. But will it be enough? Experts say China's climate action trajectory mirrors into progress, but not nearly fast enough to keep Earth's warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius below pre-industrial levels. The threshold, scientists warn, is vital to avoid worse disasters. And disasters are already here. Floods in India and Pakistan, wildfires raging across Spain and Portugal, record heat waves stretching from Africa to Europe. The United Nations warns the world is on the verge of collapse when it comes to avoiding the 1.5 degrees Celsius warming of the planet. That's because current temperatures are already about 1.4 degrees above the pre-industrial levels. But there is still hope, because the Paris Agreement signed a decade ago has forced countries to take climate action. Global temperature rise once projected at 4 degrees is now tracking closer to 3. Still dangerous, but progress nonetheless. The road ahead is still uncertain. Many wealthy nations are behind schedule on cutting emissions. The European Union is bogged down by industrial fears and political turmoil. France, under Emmanuel Macron, has pressed pause of deeper emission cuts, citing financial uncertainty. In this uneven landscape, China's new target may look cautious, but it signals continuity even as the United States retreats from the Paris Climate Agreement. For climate watchers, it is a reminder that the fight against planet's warming is a collective one and not a single nation story.
Plastic pollution is no longer just an ocean problem. Now scientists are finding microplastics in the human brain and even inside bones. They could be weakening bones, affecting memory, and threatening our health in ways we are only just beginning to understand. Watch our next report to see what you can do to protect yourself.
The harms of plastic pollution are well known. But it's not just polybags, cans and bottles. Plastic pollution is deeper than what you see. It has spread to places you can't even imagine. Oceans, rivers, seafood, packaged drinks, and even the human body. Yes, plastics have entered the human body. Studies show they can reach deep into bones and the brain, and they are linked to serious health issues like dementia. But how does plastic get there? It's actually microplastics. Extremely small pieces of plastic debris. They are now almost everywhere, because plastics break down into tiny particles through daily use, disposal and environmental wear and tear. Their presence in the human body is alarming. A new study in Osteoporosis International shows microplastics penetrating bone marrow. Scientists fear it may be harming human health on a large scale. The study reviewed 62 scientific articles. It confirmed microplastics can infiltrate blood, brain, placenta, breast milk and bone tissue, including bone marrow. So what can microplastics do to bones? They can cause osteoporosis, a disease that makes bones fragile. They can increase fracture risks, they can damage cells and trigger inflammation, speeding up aging. And it's not just bones. A recent study in Nature Medicine 2025 found microplastics in human brains. Brain samples from dementia patients had up to 10 times more microplastics than healthy brains. Some brains had 30 times more microplastics than liver or kidney tissue. So, is this preventable? In the state of the current environment, exposure to microplastics cannot be completely eliminated. But experts say one can reduce risks. Some of the practical steps include cutting back single-use plastics and using glass or steel, avoiding heating food in plastic containers, eating fresh food, and limit packaged or processed items, filtering tap water wherever possible, avoid smoking, and maintain bone health with calcium, vitamin D, and regular exercise. Microplastics are no longer just an environmental crisis. They are inside us, our bones and our brains. The risks are growing and the clock is ticking. The sooner we act, the safer our future will be.
And that's it on Planet Pulse for today. Thank you for watching. We will see you again next week at the same time. Stay tuned to Firstpost.